Hello, everybody. Uh, Welcome to another session of Sophie's World Reading. And today we are going to talk specifically. We have finished can't, whatever the guy's name is. Then we are going to go to romanticism, basically. That is the next chapter. And we have been joined in the panel by Davji. Davji, hello, good evening, welcome, sir. Okay, he's on mute, but I'm going to get started and get through this chapter because it also promises to be a long one. I just checked the audio and it seems okay. It probably is a little bit low because I just started talking. Slowly my voice will warm up and hopefully you'll be able to hear me better. So Ramanathan Garu is also saying hello in the comments. So anyway, without much further delay, let's start. What page? Page number, let's see here. Romanticism. I was right there on the page and it got lost. That's the nature of reality these days. Hang on, I'll tell you. Page number 197 sir, in the PDF. Okay. So we just finished the philosophy of Kant. And then now we are moving over to romanticism. Romanticism. The path of mystery leads inwards. Fascinating. Hilda let the heavy ring binder slide into her lap. So, Ramanathan Garu, can you hear me? If you can just give me a thumbs up. I just want to make sure the volume is coming through. Hello, Davji. Welcome back again.
Hello, Vishwa.
How are you, sir? Good
Am I
evening.
audible?
Yeah, crystal clear.
Oh, great to be
Yeah,
back.
yeah. Good to have you back.
Thanks for having me. I'm
Oh, yeah,
just
yeah.
looking forward that my net doesn't go away as
Well,
usual.
not everything is in our hands, you see.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so we'll take it as it comes, huh?
hmm
Yeah. Ramanathan Garu is also
Go ahead. I'm eager to
there.
listen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So,
Good
Ramanathan
morning,
Garu,
good
welcome to the
afternoon.
panel. Good morning, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Yeah. All right. So, romanticism, the path of mystery leads inwards. Hilda let the heavy ring binder slide into her lap. Then she let it slide further onto the floor. It was already lighter in the room than when she had gone to bed. She looked at the clock. It was almost 3. She snuggled down under the covers and closed her eyes. As she was falling asleep, she wondered why her father had begun to write about Little Red Riding Hood and Winnie the Pooh. She slept until 11 o'clock the next morning. The tension in her body told her that she had dreamed intensely all night, but she could not remember what she had dreamed. It felt as if she had been in a totally different reality. She went downstairs and fixed breakfast. Her mother had put on her blue jumpsuit, ready to go down to the boathouse and work on the boathouse, sorry, and work on the motorboat. Even if it was not afloat, it had to be ship shape when Dad got back from Lebanon. So I guess he likes his motorboat ready to go. Do you want to come down and give me a hand? The mom asked. I have to read a little first. Should I come down with some tea and a mid-morning snack? What mid-morning? It was 11 o'clock. What mid-morning? That's what the mom said. When Hilda had eaten, she went back up to her room, made her bed. This is a good habit. All parents should teach their kids to make their own bed. It's very important. And sat herself comfortably in the ring binder with the ring binder, resting against her knees. Wonderful. Lawyer is also here. Hello, sir. Okay. So let's see. So let's see what Hilda is going to read. All right. Sophie slipped through the hedge and stood. So now Hilda is reading about Sophie. Okay. Sophie slipped through the hedge and stood in the big garden, which she had once thought of as her own Garden of Eden. There were branches and leaves strewn everywhere after the storm the night before. It seemed to her that there was some connection between the storm and the fallen branches, and her meeting with Little Red Riding Hood and Winnie the Pooh. She went to the house. It's pronounced Pooh actually, Winnie the Pooh. She went into the house. Her mother had just gotten home and was putting some bottles of soda in the refrigerator. On the table was a delicious looking chocolate cake. Are you expecting visitors? Asked Sophie. She had almost forgotten it was her birthday, and this birthday thing never stops. We are having the real party next Saturday, but I thought we ought to have a little celebration today as well. How? I invited Joanna and her parents. Fine with me, Sophie said. The visitors arrived shortly before 7:30. The atmosphere was somewhat formal. Sophie's mother very seldom saw Joanna's parents socially. It was not long before Sophie and Joanna went upstairs to Sophie's room to write the garden party invitations. So the real garden party was later, but this is more of a private event. Since Alberto Knox was also to be invited, Sophie had the idea of inviting people to a philosophical garden party. How about that? Joanna didn't object. It was Sophie's party after all, and the theme parties were in at the moment. In as in, there was a cool thing to do, theme party. Finally, they had composed the invitation. It had taken 2 hours and they couldn't stop laughing. Dear, you are hereby invited to a philosophical garden party at 3 Clover Close on Saturday, June 23rd, Midsummer Eve, at 7 p.m. During the evening, we shall hopefully solve the mystery of life. Please bring warm sweaters and bright ideas suitable for solving the riddles of philosophy. Because of the danger of woodland fires, we unfortunately cannot have a bonfire. But everybody is free to let the flames of their imagination flicker unimpeded. There will be at least one genuine philosopher among the invited guests. And seriously, this is one hell of an invitation. For this reason, the party is a strictly private arrangement. Members of the press will not be admitted. With regards, Joanna Ingbrightson, organizing committee, and Sophie Amundsen, hostess. What an invite. The two girls went downstairs to their parents, who were now talking somewhat more freely. Sophie handed the draft invitation, written with a calligraphic pen, to her mother. Could you make 18 copies, please? It was not the first time she had asked her mother to make photocopies of her at work. Her mother read the invitation and then handed it to Joanna's father. You see what I mean? She's going a little crazy, of course. But it looks really exciting, said Joanna's father, true, handing the sheet onto his wife. I wouldn't mind coming to that party myself. Barbie read the invitation. Barbie must be the wife, right? Then she said, well, I must say, can we come too, Sophie? Let's say 20 copies then. Ooh, she was not planning to invite them first. Then Sophie, taking them at their word. You must be nuts, said Joanna. So probably she wanted to get away from her parents and then whatever, parents are coming as well. Before Sophie went to bed that night, she stood for a long time gazing out of the window. She remembered how she had once seen the outline of Alberto's figure in the darkness. It was more than a month ago. Now it was again late at night, but this was a white summer night. Sophie heard nothing from Alberto until Tuesday morning. He called just after her mother had left for work. Sophie Amundsen and Alberto Knox. I thought so. I'm sorry I didn't call before, but I've been working hard on our plan. I can only be alone and work undisturbed when the major is concentrating wholly and completely on you. That means he doesn't want any interference from you. That's weird, said Sophie. Then I seized the opportunity to conceal myself. You see, the best surveillance system in the world has its limitations when it is only controlled by one single person. I got your card. You mean the invitation? Dare you risk it? Why not? Anything can happen at a party like that. Are you coming? So she's asking Alberto Knox. Of course I'm coming. But there is another thing. Did you remember that it's the day Hilda's father gets back from Lebanon? No, I didn't actually, Sophie says. It can't possibly be pure coincidence that he lets you arrange a philosophical garden party the same day as he gets home from Jerkley. I didn't think about it, as I said. I'm sure he did. But all right, we'll talk about that later. Can you come to the major's cabin this morning? I'm supposed to weed the flower beds, Sophie says. Let's say 2 o'clock then. Can you make that? So he's assuming, right, that she's going to be there. And then she obliges, obviously. I'll be there. Alberto Knox was sitting on the step again when Sophie arrived. Have a seat, he said, getting straight down to work. Previously, we spoke of the Renaissance, the Baroque period, and the Enlightenment. Today, we are going to talk about Romanticism, which could be described as Europe's last great cultural epoch. We are approaching the end of a long story, my child. Did Romanticism last that long? Asked Sophie. It began towards the end of the 18th century and lasted till the middle of the 19th. But after 1850, one can no longer speak of whole epochs which comprise poetry, philosophy, art, science, and music. Wonderful. So that's what an epoch typically contains, all these elements, right? It's a parcel of time where there is a lot of common development and cross-pollination. Was Romanticism one of these epochs? It has been said, Alberto is saying, it has been said that Romanticism was Europe's last common approach to life. It started in Germany, arising as a reaction to Enlightenment's unequivocal emphasis on reason. After Kant and his cool intellectualism, it was as if German youth heaved a sigh of relief. What did they replace it with? Asked Sophie. The new catchwords were feeling, imagination, experience, and yearning. Some of the Enlightenment thinkers had drawn attention to the importance of feeling, not least Rousseau. But at that time, it was a criticism of the bias towards reason. So it was a reaction, not an original movement. What had been an undercurrent now became the mainstream of German culture. Wonderful. So Kant's popularity didn't last very long, asked Sophie. Well, it did and it didn't. Many of the Romantics saw themselves as Kant's successors, since Kant had established that there was a limit to what we can know of Das Ding and sich. On the other hand, he had underlined the importance of the ego's contribution to knowledge or cognition. The individual was now completely free to interpret life in his own way. The Romantics exploited this as an almost unrestrained ego worship, which led to the exaltation of artistic genius. So, the artistic genius is an expression of the ego, basically. Were there a lot of these geniuses? She asked. So, Alberto is saying, Beethoven was one. His music expresses his own feelings and yearnings. Beethoven was, in a sense, a free artist, unlike the Baroque masters such as Bach and Handel, who composed their works to the glory of God, mostly in strict musical forms. So that God, the religious connotation is gone, which makes it in quotes free music basically. I only know the Moonlight Sonata and the Fifth Symphony, of course, who doesn't? But you know how romantic the Moonlight Sonata is, and you can hear how dramatically Beethoven expresses himself in the Fifth Symphony. You said the Renaissance humanists were individuals too. Yes, there are many similarities between the Renaissance and Romanticism. I'll pause here. Let me look at the comments. A few comments here from Tauji exited. I presume he's going to come back. That's okay. So anyway, the link is pinned, so anybody can come and join for the reading, or you can be in the comments also. Okay. So you said the Renaissance humanists were individuals too. Yes, there are many similarities between the Renaissance and Romanticism. A typical one was the importance of art to human cognition. Kant made a considerable contribution here as well. In his aesthetics, he investigated what happens when we are overwhelmed by beauty in a work of art, for instance. When we abandon ourselves to a work of art with no other intention than the aesthetic appearance itself, aesthetic means beautiful or something that appeals to your sense of beauty, basically, we are brought closer to an experience of Das Ding and Sich. So the artist can provide. So let's remind the viewers what this Das Ding and Sich is. So Das Ding and Sich means philosophical term, the thing in itself. That's what it means, right? So when we get lost in a work of art, when we are overwhelmed by the aesthetics of it, then we are brought closer to an experience of the thing in itself, basically, right? So the artist can provide something philosophers can't express. That's the view of the Romantics. According to Kant, the artist plays freely on his faculty of cognition. The German poet Schiller developed Kant's thought further. He wrote that the activity of the artist is like playing, and man is only free when he plays, because then he makes up his own rules. The Romantics believed that only art could bring us closer to the inexpressible. Some went as far as to compare the artist to God, because the artist creates his own reality the way God created the world. That's what Sophie is asking. It was said that the artist had a universe creating imagination. In his transports of artistic rapture, he could sense the dissolving of the boundary between dream and reality. Novalis, one of the young geniuses, said that the world becomes a dream and the dream becomes reality. He wrote a novel called Heinrich von After Dingen, set in the medieval times. It was unfinished when he died in 1801, but it was nevertheless a very significant novel. It tells of the young Heinrich who is searching for the blue flower that he once saw in a dream and has yearned for ever since. The English romantic poet Coleridge expressed the same idea, saying something like this. So, what did Coleridge say? What if you slept? And what if in your sleep you dreamed? And what if in your dream you went to heaven and there plucked a strange and beautiful flower? And what if when you awoke you had the flower in your hand? Ah, what then? It's wonderful. It's a great thought. How pretty, Sophie says. This yearning for something distant and unattainable was characteristic of the Romantics. They longed for bygone eras such as the Middle Ages, which now became enthusiastically reappraised after the Enlightenment's negative evaluation. So the Enlightenment evaluated the Middle Ages negatively, the Dark Ages or whatever, but then the Romantics reimagined them, rewrote history almost from a different lens. And they longed for distant cultures like the Orient with its mysticism, or else they would feel drawn to night, to twilight, to old ruins, and the supernatural. They were preoccupied with what we usually refer to as the dark side of life, or the murky, uncanny, and the mystical. So, India at least does not treat the mystical side of life as dark. It sounds to me like an exciting period. Who were these romantics? So, Sophie is asking basically. Romanticism was, in the main, an urban phenomenon. In the first half of the last century, there was, in fact, a flourishing metropolitan culture in many parts of Europe, not least in Germany. The typical romantics were young men, often university students, although they did not always take their studies very seriously. They had a decidedly anti middle class approach to life and could refer to the police or their landladies as Philistines, for example, or simply as the enemy. So they wanted to be really free. I would never have dared rent a room to a romantic, Sophie says. The first generation of romantics were young in about 1800, and we could actually call the romantic movement Europe's first student uprising. The romantics were not unlike the hippies 150 years later. I say, you mean the flower power and long hair, strumming their guitars and lying around? Reminds me of Woodstock in the 60s and 70s. Yes, it was once said, or whatever the hippie movement in the US as well. It was once said that the idleness is the ideal of genius and indolence the virtue of the romantic. I've heard this one before. I've heard this one before. Um, once again, I'll quote it one more time. I like it. It was once said that idleness is the ideal of genius and indolence is the audience neglect, neglect the pursuit of indolence. Indolence means avoidance of activity or exertion or laziness. Uh, I'll SKR, welcome to the panel. I'll give it to you as soon as I'm done with this part. Okay. So yes, it was once said that
Sorry, sir, your voice I think it is breaking a bit.
Yeah.
breaking up. Okay. How is it now better?
Uh,
Not better.
Now I think it is better. Yeah. Uh, which page, Vishwagaru?
Yeah. Page number 201. I'm in the very first paragraph.
Okay.
Okay.
Two.
So let me finish that paragraph and I'll give it to you.
Mm.
Yes, it was once said that idleness. Somebody else. Largaru is now appearing as. So we got Alberto Knox and what's his name? The major both are in the panel. Okay. It was once said that the idleness is the ideal of genius, and indolence, which is avoiding all kinds of exertion, laziness, whatever, or laziness, is the virtue of the romantic. It was the duty of the romantic to experience life or to dream himself away from it. Day-to-day business could be taken care of by the Philistines. Okay. The next line is yours.
Byron, what is it? How is
Yeah,
it?
Byron.
Byron was a romantic poet, wasn't he?
Yes, both Byron and Shelley were romantic poets of the so-called Satanic school. Byron, moreover, provided the romantic age with its idol, the Byronic hero, the alien, moody, rebellious spirit, in life as well as in art. Byron himself could be both willful and passionate, and being also handsome, he was besieged by women of fashion. Public gossip attributed the romantic adventures of his verses to his own life, but although he had numerous liaisons, true love remained as elusive and as unattainable for him as Novalis's blue flower. Novalis became engaged to a 14-year-old girl. She died 4 days after her 15th birthday, but Novalis remained devoted to her for the rest of his short life. All right.
Did you say she died 4 days after her 15th birthday?
Yes.
I am 15 years and 4 days old today.
So you are.
What was her name?
Her name was Sophie.
What?
Yes, it was.
You scare me. Could it be a coincidence?
I couldn't say Sophie, but her name was Sophie.
Okay, go on.
Novalis himself died when he was only 21. He was one of the Yun dead, Yun 9 dead. I don't know what that means, but many of the romantics died young, I believe, usually of tuberculosis. Terrible, terrible. Some committed suicide.
Ah,
So he was one of the young dead, I guess. That's young.
younger. Mm.
Yeah. Those who live to be old usually stop being romantics. Listen to this very carefully, all romantics out there. Those who live to be old usually stop being romantics at about the age of 30. Some of them went on to become thoroughly middle class and conservative.
Oh, they went over to the enemy then.
Maybe, but we are talking about romantic love. Theme of unrequited love was introduced as early as 1774 by Goethe in his novel The Sorrows of Young Werther. The book ends with young Werther shooting himself when he can't have the woman he loves.
Was it necessary to go that far?
The suicide rate rose after the publication of the novel, and for a time, the book was banned in Denmark and Norway. So, being a romantic was not without danger. Strong emotions were involved.
When you say romantic, I think of those great big landscape paintings with dark forests and wild, rugged nature, preferably in swirling mists.
Yes, one of the features of Romanticism was his yearning for nature and nature's mysteries. As I said, it was not the kind of thing that arises in rural areas. You may call Rousseau, who initiated the slogan back to nature. The Romantics gave this slogan popular currency. Romanticism represents not least a reaction to Enlightenment's mechanistic universe. It was said that Romanticism implied a renaissance of the old cosmic consciousness.
Explain that, please.
It means viewing nature as a whole. The Romantics were tracing their roots not only back to Spinoza, but also to Plotinus and Renaissance. Philosophers like Jacob Boehme and Giordano, Giordano Bruno. What all these thinkers had in common was that they experienced a divine ego in nature.
They were pantheists then.
Both Descartes and Hume had drawn a sharp line between the ego and extended reality. Kant also left behind him a sharp distinction between the cognitive I and nature in itself. Now it was said that nature is nothing but one big I. The Romantics also used expressions world soul or world spirit.
I see.
The leading philosopher was Schelling, who lived from 1775 to 1854. He wanted to unite mind and matter. All of nature, both the human soul and physical reality, is the expression of one absolute or world spirit, he believed.
Yeah, just like Spinoza.
Nature is visible spirit, spirit is invisible nature, said Schilling. Since one senses a structuring spirit everywhere in nature, he said that the matter is slumbering intelligence.
You'll have to explain that a bit more clearly.
Schelling saw a world spirit in nature, but he saw the same world spirit in the human mind. The natural and the spiritual are actually expressions of the same thing.
Yes, why not?
World spirit can thus be sought both in nature and in one's own mind. Novalis could therefore say the path of mystery leads inwards. He was saying that the man bears the whole universe within himself and comes closest to the mystery of the world by stepping inside himself.
That's a very lovely thought.
Yeah, it is. For many romantics, philosophy, nature study, and poetry formed a synthesis. Coming together basically, synthesis means. Sitting in your attic, dashing off inspired verses, and investigating the life of plants or the composition of rocks were only two sides of the same coin because nature is not a dead mechanism, it is one living world spirit.
Another word, and I think I'll become a romantic.
Of course, it is quite fascinating. The Norwegian born naturalist Henrik Steffens, whom Wergeland called Norway's departed laurel leaf because he had settled in Germany, went to Copenhagen in 1801 to lecture on German Romanticism. He characterized the Romantic movement by saying, tired of the eternal efforts to fight our way through raw matter, we chose another way and sought to embrace the infinite. We went inside ourselves and created a new world.
How can you remember all that?
A bagatelle, child.
Go on then.
Schelling also saw a development in nature from earth to rock to the human mind. He drew attention to very gradual transitions from inanimate nature to more complicated life forms. It was characteristic of the romantic view in general that nature was thought of as an organism, or in other words, a unity which is constantly developing its innate potentialities. Nature is like a flower unfolding its leaves and petals, or like a poet unfolding his verses.
Doesn't that remind you of Aristotle?
It does indeed. The Romantic natural philosophy had Aristotelian as well as Neoplatonic overtones. Aristotle had a more organic view of natural processes than the mechanical materialists.
Yes, that's what I thought.
We find similar ideas at work in the field of history. A man who came to have great significance for the Romantics was the historical philosopher Johann Gottfried von Herder, who lived from 1744 to 1803. He believed that history is characterized by continuity, evolution, and design. We say he had a dynamic view of history because he saw it as a process. The Enlightenment philosophers had often had a static view of history. To them, there was only one universal reason, which there could be more or less of at various periods. So there's only one, but different quantities of it, or more or less of it. But um, uh, the Romantics had a slightly different view of history as well. Herder showed that each historical epoch had its own intrinsic value and each nation its own character or soul. The question is whether we can identify with other cultures. Wonderfully put.
Hmm. So, just as we have to identify with another person's situation to understand them better, we have to identify with our cultures to understand them too.
With other cultures.
With other cultures to understand them.
Yeah. So that is the Poropaksha concept, right? That is taken for granted nowadays. But in the Romantic period, it was a new idea. Romanticism helped strengthen the feeling of national identity. It is no coincidence that the Norwegian struggle for national independence flourished at that particular time in 1814.
I see.
Because Romanticism involved new orientations in so many ways, it has been usual to distinguish between two forms of Romanticism. There is what we call universal romanticism, referring to the romantics who were preoccupied with the nature, world soul, and artistic genius. This form of romanticism flourished first, especially around 1800, in Germany in the town of Jena.
And the other?
The other is the so-called national romanticism. So there's universal and national. So so-called national romanticism, which became popular a little later, especially in the town of Heidelberg. The national romantics were mainly interested in the history of the people, the language of the people, and the culture of the people in general. And the people were seen as an organism unfolding its innate potentiality, exactly like nature and history.
Tell me where you live, and I'll tell you who you are.
Yeah, more or less. Tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are, kind of.
Uh,
Yeah. What united these two aspects of romanticism was first and foremost the keyword organism. The romantics considered both a plant and a nation to be living organisms. So here, take a look at this. The anthropo anthropomorphic view of a nation, right? It's not just an Indian idea. Okay. So romantics considered both a plant and a nation to be a living organism. A poetic work was also a living organism. Language was an organism. The entire physical world, even, was considered one organism. There is therefore no sharp dividing line between national romanticism and universal romanticism. The world spirit was just as much present in the people and in popular culture as in nature and art. So the anthropomorphization of lands or nations is one way of looking at it. Example is Bharata Mata.
mm,
Right?
I see.
Herder had been the fortune teller, collecting folk songs, forerunner, sorry. Herder had been the forerunner, collecting folk songs from many lands under the eloquent title Voices of the People. He even referred to folk tales as the mother tongue of the people. Wonderful. The brothers Grimm and others began to collect folk songs and fairy tales in Heidelberg. You must know of Grimm's fairy tales.
Oh, sure. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Rum,
Rumpelstiltskin.
Rumpelstiltskin. The Frog Prince. Hansel and Gretel.
Hansel and Gretel. Yeah, that's a very dark one. But there is a book called Grimm's Fairy Tales. I remember reading it as a kid, and many more. In Norway, we had As Asbjornsen and Mo, who traveled around the country collecting folks' own tales. Right? It was like harvesting a juicy fruit and then suddenly discovered to be both good. That was suddenly discovered to be both good and nourishing. And it was urgent. The fruit had already begun to fall. Folk songs were collected. The Norwegian language began to be studied scientifically. The old myths and sagas from heathen times were rediscovered, and composers all over Europe began to incorporate folk melodies into their compositions in an attempt to bridge the gap between folk music and art music.
What's art music?
Art music is music composed by a particular person, like Beethoven. Folk music was not written by any particular person. జానపదాలు అంటారు చూడండి.
Uh,
It's called Janapada Gayams. In Telugu, there are many in Andhra and even southern states. I'm sure even in North, there are a lot of local, um, like all these Bhojpuri songs, Avadi songs, and all that. Right? One extra large version of it is the Ramacharita written by Tulsidas. Folk music was not written by any particular person. It came from the people. That's why we don't know exactly when the various folk melodies date from. We distinguish in the same way between folk tales and art tales.
so, art tales are?
They are tales written by an author like Hans Christian Andersen. The fairy tale genre was passionately cultivated by the Romantics. One of the German masters of the genre was E.T.A. Hoffmann.
I've heard of the tales of Hoffman.
The fairy tale was absolute literary ideal of the Romantics. In the same way, the absolute art form of the Baroque period was the theatre. It gave the poet full scope to explore his own creativity.
He could play God to a fictional universe.
Precisely, and this is a good moment to sum up.
Go ahead.
The philosophers of Romanticism viewed the world soul as an ego, which in a more or less dreamlike state created everything in the world. Philosopher Fitch said, That nature, fitched, I don't know how to pronounce that one, but anyway, nature stems from a higher unconscious imagination. Schelling said explicitly that a world is in God. God is aware of some of it, he believed, but there are other aspects of nature which represent the unknown in God. For God also has a dark side.
The thought is fascinating and frightening. It reminds me of Berkeley.
The relationship between the artist and his work was seen in exactly the same light. Fairy tale gave the writer free rein to exploit his universe creating imagination. And even the creative act was not always completely conscious. The writer could experience that this story was being written by some innate force. The other day, somebody came to the panel and was speaking about something like this. Remember? He could practically be in a hypnotic trance while he wrote.
He could?
Yes, but then he would suddenly destroy the illusion. He could intervene in the story and address ironic comments to the reader, so that the reader, at least momentarily, would be reminded that it was, after all, only a story.
See.
At the same time, so it's like an out of body experience or whatever they call it.
Mm.
Somebody else is doing what I'm not there. At the same time, the writer could remind his reader that it was he who was manipulating the fictional universe. This form of disillusion is called romantic irony. Henrik Ibsen, for example, lets one of the characters in Peer Gynt say, "One cannot die in the middle of Act 5."
Act 5? What
The
is
more
Act
or
5?
less the end, right? When the
Mm.
story
Oh,
is
okay, okay.
being, yeah, when the story is being explained, you cannot die in the middle of it.
Oh.
So in
That-
theater, there are uh, the standard template of a theater play follows certain principles. So there is
mm.
a first act, second act, third act, things like that, right? So I don't know all the details, but I do know that Act 5 comes somewhere in the end.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's a very funny line, actually. What he's really saying is that he's only a fictional character.
This statement is so paradoxical that we can certainly emphasize it with a new section.
What did you mean by that?
Oh, nothing, Sophie, but we did say that Novelis's fiance was called Sophie, just like you, and that she died when she was only 15 years and 4 days old.
You're scaring me. Don't you know that?
Alberto sat staring stony faced. Then he said, "But you don't need to be worried that you'll meet with the same fate as Novelis's fiance,
Why not?
because there are several more chapters."
What are you saying?
I'm saying that anyone reading the story of Sophie and Alberto will know intuitively that there are many pages of the story still to come. We have only gotten as far as romanticism.
You're making me dizzy.
It's really the major trying to make Hilda dizzy. It's not very nice of him, is it? New section. Okay, so I don't know if this is part of romanticism, but there are a few more pages. Maybe we can finish this and then go to Hegel.
Okay.
So this
Alberto
is
had hardly finished speaking when a boy came running out of the woods. He had a turban on his head and he was carrying an oil lamp. Sophie grabbed Alberto's arm. Who's that? She asked. The boy answered for himself. My name is Aladdin and I have come all the way from Lebanon. Alberto looked at him sternly.
and what do you have in your lamp?
The boy rubbed the lamp, and out of it rose a thick cloud which formed itself into the figure of a man. He had a black beard like Alberto's and a blue beret. Floating above the lamp, he said, Can you hear me, Hilda? I suppose it's too late for any more birthday greetings. I just wanted to say that Jerkly and the South Country back home seem like fairyland to me here in Lebanon. I'll see you there in few days. So saying, the figure became a cloud again and was sucked back into the lamp. The boy with the turban put the lamp under his arm, ran into the woods, and was gone. I don't believe this, said Sophie.
A bagatelle, my dear.
The spirit of the lamp spoke exactly like Hilda's father.
That's because it was Hilda's father in spirit.
But
Both you and I and everything around us are living deep in the Major's mind. It is late at night on Saturday, April 28th, and all the UN soldiers are asleep around the Major, who, although still awake, is not far from sleep himself. But he must finish the book he is to give Hilda as a 15th birthday present. That's why he has to work, Sophie. That's why the poor man gets hardly any rest.
I give up.
New section.
Sophie and Alberto sat looking across the little lake. Alberto seemed to be in some sort of trance. After a while, Sophie ventured to nudge his shoulder. Were you dreaming?
Yes, he was interfering directly there. The last few paragraphs were dictated by him to the letter. He should be ashamed of himself, but now he has given himself away and come out into the open. Now we know that we are living our lives in a book which Hilda's father will send home to Hilda as a birthday present. You heard what I said? Well, it wasn't me saying it.
If what you say is true, I'm going to run away from the book and go my own way.
That's exactly what I'm planning. But before that can happen, we must try and talk with Hilda. She reads every word we say. Once we succeed in getting away from here, it'll be much harder to contact her. That means we must grasp the opportunity now.
What do we say?
I think the major is about to fall asleep over his typewriter, although his fingers are still racing feverishly over the keys.
It's a creepy thought.
That is the moment when we may write something he will regret later, and he has no correction fluid. That's a vital part of my plan. May no one give the major a bottle of correction fluid.
He won't get so much as a single cover up strip from me.
I'm calling on that poor girl here and now to rebel against her own father. She should be ashamed to let herself be amused by his self indulgent playing with shadows. If only we had him here, we'd give him a taste of our indignation.
But he's not here.
He is here in spirit and soul. He is also safely tucked away in Lebanon. Everything around us is the major's ego.
But he's more than what we can see here.
We are but shadows in the major's soul, and it is no easy matter for a shadow to turn on its master, Sophie. It requires both cunning and strategy. But we have an opportunity of influencing Hilda. Only an angel can rebel against God.
We could ask Hilda to give him a piece of her mind the moment he gets home. She could tell him he's a rogue. She could wreck his boat or at least smash the lantern.
Alberto nodded. Then he said she could also run away from him. That would be much easier for her than it is. She could leave the major's house and never return. How evil. Wouldn't that be fitting for a major who plays with his universe creating imagination at our expense?
I can picture it. The major travels all over the world searching for Hilda, but Hilda has vanished into thin air because she can't stand living with a father who plays the fool at Alberto's and Sophie's expense.
Yes, that's it. Plays the fool. That's what I meant by using us as birthday amusement. But he'd better watch out, Sophie. So had Hilda.
How do you mean?
Are you sitting tight?
As long as there are no more genies from a lamp.
Try to imagine that everything that happens to us goes on in someone else's mind. We are that mind. That means we have no soul. We are someone else's soul. So far, we are on familiar philosophical ground. Both Berkeley and Schelling would prick up their ears.
And
Now, it is possible that this soul is Hilda Moller Nag's father. He is over there in Lebanon writing a book on philosophy for his daughter's 15th birthday. When Hilda wakes up on June 15th, she finds the book on her bedside table, and now she and anyone else can read about us. It has long been suggested that this present could be shared with others.
yes, I remember.
What I am saying to you now will be read by Hilda after her father in Lebanon once imagined that I was telling you he was in Lebanon. Imagining me telling you that he was in Lebanon. Okay, this is like a little bit convoluted.
Sophie's head was swimming. She tried to remember what she had heard about Berkeley and the Romantics. Alberta Knox continued.
But they shouldn't feel so cocky because of that. They are the last people who should laugh because laughter can get easily stuck in their throat.
Who are we talking about?
Hilda and her father. Weren't we talking about them?
But why shouldn't they feel so cocky?
Because it is feasible that they too are nothing but mind.
How could they be?
If it was possible for Berkeley and the Romantics, it must be possible for them. Maybe the Major is also a shadow in a book about him and Hilda, which is also about us, since we are a part of their lives.
That would be even worse. That makes us only shadows of shadows.
Correct. But it is possible that a completely different author is somewhere writing about a UN Major, Albert Nag, who was writing a book for his daughter Hilda. This book is about a certain Alberto Knox who suddenly begins to send humble philosophical lectures to Sophie Amundsen, 3 Clover Close.
Do you believe that?
I am just saying it's possible. To us, the author would be a hidden god. Although everything we are and everything we say and do proceeds from him, because we are him, we will never be able to know anything about him. We are in the innermost box.
Alberta and Sophie now sat for a long time without saying anything. It was Sophie who finally broke the silence. But if there really is an author who's writing a story about Hilda's father in Lebanon, just like he's writing a story about us,
Yes?
then it's possible that author shouldn't be cocky either.
What do you mean?
He's sitting somewhere, hiding both Hilda and me deep inside his head. Isn't it just possible that he too is a part of higher mind?
Alberto nodded. Of course it is, Sophie. That's also a possibility. And if that is the way it is, it means he has permitted us to have this philosophical conversation in order to present this possibility. He wishes to emphasize that he too is a helpless shadow, and that this book, in which Hilda and Sophie appear, is in reality a textbook on philosophy.
A textbook?
Because all our conversations, because all our conversations or our dialogues
Yes?
are in reality one long monologue.
I get the feeling that everything is dissolving into mind and spirit. I'm glad there are still a few philosophers left. The philosophy that began so proudly with oh, ಇದು ಮೀದಾ?
No, no,
With, it's still Sophie's line, right? The philosophy
okay.
that began the philosophy that began so proudly with Thales, Empedocles, and Democritus can't be stranded here, surely?
Empedocles and Democritus. Of course not. I still have to tell you about Hegel. He was the first philosopher who tried to salvage philosophy when the Romantics had dissolved everything into spirit. Be
I'm very
careful with these
curious.
Romantics.
అదే కదా either they end up being that middle class, what is it,
Philistines,
some middle class old
the dark
elders, or,
people, the enemies,
yeah, or dissolve into spirit,
right?
everything into spirit. Okay, I'm very curious.
So as not to be interrupted by any further spirits or shadows, we shall go inside. It's
It's
getting
getting
chilly out
chilly out
here.
here anyway.
Yep. Next chapter. So Hegel. The reasonable is that which is viable, is what Hegel said, and we'll talk about him next week. So we are getting close to the end of the book. We have completed 208 pages, another 100 to go. So maybe a few, 3, 4 more sessions, and we'll be through. Wonderful reading. So
200
you,
pages took 22 sessions,
oh,
meaning
okay.
next 100 pages should take 10 sessions.
10 sessions? No, we'll accelerate. We'll accelerate.
It's like mathematics.
No, no, no. It will go faster because now I don't know how many more additional philosophies are going to be introduced. You know, so when there are concepts introduced, you have to go slow, right?
Mm.
But that doesn't mean you have to. But this is a very wonderful way of presenting everything. So what would be good is if somebody, I'll try to do it myself. If we can summarize everything, right, at the end of it, probably there is, right, and this is the philosophical angle. But what about the social and political and I'm sure there were many wars that happened as this was going on. This entire philosophical thing was being developed.
Hmm.
So the socio-political economic developments in the world should also be looked at to see how they impacted these ideas. Because once the romantics were out, it all became there was no unified approach to life. It became sort of very, the science and philosophy became like sort of separated out, right?
Hmm.
And the science and technology took over. And after that, it's all, now we are back to that, the age of more or less empiricism, right? Which is show me, prove to me kind of approach.
Right.
Rationality, rationalists. So
Yeah.
that's where we stand right now. And there are many parallels to the Indian philosophical thought as well. So it's not like they are unique in their approaches. You know, while India was dealing with all kinds of Abrahamic religious crusades and all other nonsense, uh, India had its own thought process fairly robustly developed even during these times, 16 and 1700s. And all. So, I mean, there are so many books that are translated now into English. So one of the examples is the Vedanta Panchadasi. The other day I was actually looking at it by Vidyaranya. Right? It's a very hardcore, logical and philosophical book. He was the founder of the Vijayanagara Empire and very Advaita proponent. He's one of the key contributors to Advaita, basically. So,
He has already, I think he has written Bhagavad Gita Bhashya also, Vidyaranya Bhashya.
oh, okay. I haven't seen that, but this
And he
goes much.
translated these Vedas also.
Yeah, yeah.
From,
So, I mean, to nowadays we get these jokers who say Advaita is not practical, which is funny because the last big Hindu empire in the south was Vijayanagara Empire. And it was founded by an Advaita teacher, actually. Yeah, so go figure. So that's that. So we have covered romantics. We have covered all kinds of people, right? So fascinating. What would be even more interesting is to actually go into each of these theories and see what they were really proposing. You know, this is just 101. It's a very sort of kid kid sort of intro to philosophy, right? But I'm sure if you go in, there are all kinds of arguments that come. Yeah, that's it. Should we close? Any questions, comments?
Leదండి, I'm good.
Good, excellent. So with that, thanks everybody for participating. Thanks Ramanathan Garu. Thanks Daoji Garu for coming into the panel. SK Garu, Lawyer Garu, as always. Wonderful. So we'll start with Hegel in the next session next week. Until then, for whoever
thanks,
is watching
guys.
the for whoever is watching it later, please like and subscribe. Thank you. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments. I'll try to address them. We'll all try to address them. Thanks once again, Ramanathan.